Check out this section that you can use on your website to showcase your work by using mockups. So here we've got a laptop floating, and then below that we've got another mockup, different sort here, that's actually within a container with a background. So it looks pretty neat, right? But what if we wanted to add some micro interactions to this, just to make it a little bit more exciting? How could we do that? So if I show you now what I mean, this page, it's the same mockups, screen seems a bit darker though, and as you scroll, the screen actually almost turns itself on. The whole laptop doesn't light up, it's just the screen, so it acts as if it turns itself on, and it's the same below. The background remains dark, but the screen itself turns on, and it turns off as you scroll beyond or scroll back upwards. And alongside this, you can actually hover on the images when they're not lit, and they'll light up as well, as if you've turned the screen on. So how do we achieve this? So for this, you actually need 2 images per mockup. One is just going to be the screen, and one is going to be the whole image. So what I'll do is I'll show you that now in my media library. So for the laptop, we've got the whole laptop with the dimmed screen. So that's what you see before you hover or before you scroll. We've got just the screen itself, and that is fully lit up. And then again, for the next one, we've got the mockup faded, and then we've got the screen itself lit up. So to get the laptop mockup, first of all, I use Affinity Designer 2, and I've got my laptop mockup here. And this contains the full laptop and the screen itself, which I've used Perspective tool to get stretched to the correct dimensions. But what you'll notice on here, so if I click on here, you can see I've got it put to every corner, so it's the right perspective. Just exit that. But here, the curve, this actual screen is 45% opacity, not 100. So if I put it up to 100, that's what it looks like normally, fully lit up. What we want is a 45%, or whatever percentage you'd like the screen to be when it's off. Set that in this section here in your opacity, and then for the getting just the image of the screen itself when it's on, you can just delete the full screen, change this to 100%, and then export this as a PNG. So what you want is you want them both exported as PNGs, and it's very important that you don't resize anything, because we want both the images exactly the same size for this to work. So you can see if I go back into here, the laptop mockup is 800 by 838 pixels, and then the laptop mockup on is 800 by 838 pixels. So this is how it works, because this screen, when it's on, is basically in the exact position that it is on the actual laptop mockup itself when it's off. So it can sit on top of the laptop and appear as if it's turning on. So for the other mockup, I've used a website called shots.so, which is really powerful for creating mockups. So it doesn't take long to create something like this, because it's all very hold your hand basically. And this mockup has been created as a browser, and then set with a dark border. And then here you can choose the sort of perspective you want over on this side. So I've chosen this one and positioned it up here. And then in frame, you can choose to have a background, which you can regenerate based on the colors within the image. So you can just click through these until you find one you like, and then export that as a PNG, but also export with, can you see here, background, export it with a transparent background. So this one is good to go with a transparent background. The one with the background, what you want to do in your design software is make it 50% opacity. So using opacity like we did before on the laptop, this one, same again, make it 50% and then export that as a PNG. And then what that'll give you is the 2 images you need to get it working if you're using a mockup in this style. So we've got this one with no background, and then the other one with a background but set at 50% opacity. So now I'll show you how to get it built and how to get this fully functional so that on scroll we'll get the screens turning on, and on hover we'll get the same as well. So I've started the page here that contains the parent container and each of the containers within that, which includes the two mockups, which are both named image, and then the text that goes with each of these mockups. So I've renamed these containers text and image just for clarity. So the parent container, I've added a lot of padding on the top and bottom just so we can see when the scroll functionality is working. Layout wise, I've set it to row and to wrap, which means the elements within it will wrap onto the next row when the space is filled. This space is filled because each of the containers is set to 35% width and grow, which means these will fill up one column each basically, and then 35 at 35 leaves you with 70%, which means the next container will be pushed to the next row. So in terms of getting the images working and the mockups, what we want to do is set this container first of all to row, and this means any children within this container will by default be stretched to the full height of the container. Then we want to go into the style tab. We want to set the background to the mockup, which is the mockup that has the screen off. We want to set this up as position center, and repeat repeat will have no repeat, and display size will have contain. So now you can see we've just got a mini laptop in there. And then what we want to do is add the screen itself. So add the image, and this is the screen when it's on. So now we've added the screen on top, and what it's doing is it's filled out this space and it's sitting neatly on top of the background of the container. But what we need to make sure is we set the height to 100% within the style tab and the object fit to contain. So this is important that these settings here, contain and center, are the exact same as what you've set on your parent container. So we've got contain and center. And what this means is if in your container or your image you don't want it to be 35%, you can change this to whatever you need and it will still remain in the correct place. Your image of the screen being on will remain in the correct place. And again, you can change it here, the height in pixels, and it means the screen will always be in the correct place. So what I'll do for now, for the purpose of this example, is I'll leave it at 100% and I'll leave that at 35. So we've got this one set up in the correct place, and I'll just do the same for this next mockup. So we want a background of the mockup when it's off, so the faded image. This one, I'll show you that it works with a display size of cover. We'll set the position to center. So this one's cover instead of contain. And then we'll add the image within. So this is the screen when it's on again. And you can see straight away it's fitting correctly. We'll make sure the height again is 100%. And the object fit this time is cover, center, so it matches the settings of the background image of the container. And again, what that means when they match is you can tweak any settings here and the screen will always remain in the correct place. And again, if you want to tweak it in the image, if you want to set up pixel height, it'll always remain in the correct place on top of the background. So for now, I'll just leave it as 100%, cover, center. So you can see both of these are on, but nothing's happening in terms of hovering or scrolling because they're permanently on. I'll just set a border radius on this one actually of 12 pixels. Same in the image, border radius will have 12. So how do we get it working so this isn't on by default? So for this, I've got some CSS code, because to get it working with the scroll, you can't just edit the image in here with opacity, because it will work here for hover, but when you add the scroll JavaScript, this doesn't work by default. So leave these blank, and we'll just add a line of CSS, a couple of lines of CSS, which are here: selector, fade image, opacity 0, and then the transition for the opacity change. And then what happens on hover is the opacity becomes 1. So we'll copy that and put that into the parent containers CSS. And what we also need to do is apply the fade image class to our images of the screen when the screen is on. So the class fade image, you can see straight away the screen has disappeared, but on hover it will appear. And we'll do the same for this image, and we'll copy that into the class fade image, publish this. And now on scroll, they're not coming on scroll yet, but you can hover and they'll turn on. Hover, turn on. So to get the animation working on scroll, it's a little bit of JavaScript. So what I'll do is I'll go into the container and add these elements, by the way, are the alpha version of Elementor. So you won't see these unless you've got the alpha version of version 4 installed. So close that. But what we want is a HTML widget, and it's just this script here. So what's happening here is you can select when the fade image, or when the screen rather, will come on and off. So I've set it to come on at 45% the way down the viewport, and to turn off when the screen hits the top of the viewport, 0. So you can tweak these to what you'd like your values to be. So I'll copy that in, paste. I'll just hide this HTML so it's not interfering with the layout. And now on scroll, we'll hit 45% of the way down the page and it'll turn on. It'll hit the top of the page and it'll turn off. Same for this screen. On, off. There we go. And hover still works. So I hope that's helped, and it brings some more excitement to your mockups, a bit more engaging with some micro interactions. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.